Good morning and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. I'm Tony Haggerty and I'm joined today by Sean Martin and Alison McConnell. It's going to be the good and the bad 20 minutes today, guys. The good, Tony Ralston being called up for the Scotland squad, and the bad, the sad news, tragic news, the passing of Bertie Auld. We'll get to both topics. Alison, Tony Ralston for Scotland. We never thought we'd say those words or hear those words or even see him being called up for Scotland at the start of the season. But take a bow, son. Clap to Tony Ralston. He's earned that, hasn't he?
He has indeed. I think it's fully merited the way he's performed over the last few months. I think there was some surprise when he was left out of the squad originally. I think there was a few people feeling as though that he'd done enough to be in there. He's obviously been in the manager's thoughts, and then with Nathan Patterson suspended, he's been called up. I think it's absolutely merited. It's an opportunity for him now to further kick on in his career. I think international football can offer a whole other layer. I think it's also very good for players then when they're competing in European games. If you've got that experience in your locker, I think it's hugely beneficial. I think it reflects well on the boy. I think it reflects well on Celtic too, that they're in this position, and it's up to him now to go and make sure that his performances week in, week out for Celtic enable him to stay in and about that squad.
Alison touches on a good point there, Sean. Playing international football will only develop Ralston even more and make him a better player, don't you think?
No, I agree, and I agree with the two of you. I think he does deserve it. I think you could obviously have made the case, which we kind of did, that he could have been in the squad before now, given that he was playing week in, week out. But no, it's credit to him. You're right enough, Tony. At the start of the season, not one of us would have thought that mid-November we'd be talking about Ralston should have been in the squad, and now that's him finally in the squad for Scotland, that kind of thing. So just all credit to him, and I think it reflects well on Ange Postecoglou as well, the impact that he's had on him since he came.
I think so too. I made the point yesterday, I was talking on another pod, and I said that the man management, Alison, that Ange Postecoglou, or the Jedi mind trick that he's performed on Tony Ralston by just saying to him, listen, you're my man, I'm going to keep faith in you. This was a player who was supposedly heading out the exit door, but Ange Postecoglou has just said to him, look, can you believe you can do this? And he's clearly looked him in the eye and said, yep, I can do this. And he's ran with it, and he's just repaid every faith that the manager has had on him, really.
Yeah, I think the first point is that I think the measure of a good coach and a good manager is improving players. I think it's one of the barometers of quality coaching, and I think you've seen that reflected in players who have kicked on, and Anthony Ralston would definitely be the most notable example of that this season. So I would agree. I think it reflects well on the manager. But the second point is that there was no magic spell. The boy had to work hard, and I think he had to get his head down. And I think it must have been difficult. I don't think you can overestimate how hard it would be to play at Celtic Park when you feel as though you've lost the trust of people, when you know that you've lost the trust of the support. I think it would have been difficult to miss that this summer. I think you're picking up your phone and you're seeing what's on social media. You're looking at newspapers talking about who's being scouted for the right back position. You've got Juranovic coming in, who was due to play there, and it should have been playing there had there not been issues on the left. So I think to block all that out, to just to resign that as background noise and truly focus on what you had to do day to day in training and then in games, I think it reflects well on him and the mentality that he brings to games.
Sean, that does show real mental strength and fortitude there to block out everything, as Alison says, because, as Alison said there, he was getting replaced, wasn't he? All sorts of right backs were coming in, this one, that one, and it was changing on a daily basis. So you have to have some kind of character within you to say, I don't care, they can bring in who they want, I'm going to show everybody, I'm going to perform consistently. And from the start of the season, Tony Ralston 7 or 8 did it in the power ratings, and you said he won 5, didn't he?
Couple of 5s, aye, but it was the start of the season. It literally was, and include myself in that. Celtic need 2 right backs. He just will not do that kind of thing. And the turnaround has been brilliant. Obviously, I did say that it reflects well on Ange, but Alison's spot on. It obviously reflects best on Ralston himself. The fortitude that he showed to to actually grasp the opportunity, because it's not. It would have been easier for him to just fade away, to be honest. But we've mentioned it a couple of times since the window shut, which was with Celtic have signed a right back, but probably don't need to sign another one anymore because of the development and the progress that Ralston's made, and getting the Scotland call up simply tops that off.
And it's going to be interesting to see how he plays Alison in this game. Should he get game time? I mean, you're just willing the boy to do so well now, aren't you? You know, it's like he might have started the season not everybody's cup of tea, but he has kind of won the MVP so far, hasn't he, at Celtic? And just things that he does, you know, he getting up and challenging opposition players and getting in their faces. And I've mentioned before the time he dragged David Turnbull off the canvas after he made a mistake against Leverkusen. He just seems to get it, and he's acting like a Celtic player, and a Celtic player in the way the supporters would see them.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think tonight he'll see tonight as a bonus. I think he might not have expected it. I think it's there. It'll be a huge night at Hampden. I think we all know how good Denmark have been in the qualification campaign. I don't think they've lost a goal yet. You know, they qualified with games to spare and qualified quite emphatically and with a bit of style. I think it's a smashing night for Scotland. The pressure is kind of off. I know they could do with going and getting a result that would give them a seeded position for the March playoffs, but I think you're not having to get a result tonight in order to ensure a playoff berth. So it's not as fraught as what it might have been. I think he'll relish it. I think what you've seen this season is that he's responded to any challenge that's been put in front of him. This is another one, and it's up to him now to go and show that he's capable of going in and performing in that spot. At the minute, I think you've got Stephen O'Donnell and you've also got Nathan Patterson who are ahead of him. I think they'll stay ahead of him for the time being, and I think he has to show what he brings to the table, what he's got to offer, and to make sure that he's in there and challenging to start. That has to be one of the next ambitions for him.
And Sean, if he does get game time, he can relax on it, can't he, and actually enjoy it. You know, not many players get to enjoy their first cap when they play for Scotland, because, as Alison says, it's usually fraught. But this is one where, if he gets a chance, he can just relax and enjoy it and make it a memorable experience for him.
I don't know if Tony Ralston ever relaxes. He's 100 miles an hour all the time. So no, I take your point. There's worse situations to be dropped in on should they have to play the night. Almost from a Celtic point of view, maybe give him 5 minutes at the end to get his cap, make sure he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, I suppose there's that element to it, Alison, where some Celtic supporters might not want him to actually play, you know, and run the risk of getting injured, because if he gets injured, then, you know, it could be problems again. But I think it's the highest honour that you can bestow on any player, and if you're Tony Ralston, I think you'll want to feature, won't you, at some point in this game?
Desperate to feature. He's not going in just to make up the numbers. I think any player that's called in goes in thinking, I want the shirt, I want to play, and I think that's the attitude that you want. I don't think he'll be any different. It's a massive opportunity for him, and I'm sure he'll want to grasp it with both hands. And just a word on what we were talking about right backs and everything. I've actually written a piece about it for later today, but Josip Juranovic was outstanding. I don't know if any of you caught it over the weekend as Croatia qualified, but he played for his country in that right back role, and he was superb. Some of the crosses and just his all round performance was excellent. And I think all of a sudden now you're looking at that right back spot for Celtic and thinking, gosh, who's your best right back here? You know, a position that at the start of the summer was a problem role. Yeah.
Sean, that says it all, doesn't it? That he's keeping an actual international right back out of his position by the way he's played. I mean, there's no bigger kudos to Ralston for that, is there?
Aye, I mean, we've got a comment saying exactly that in the comments there. That is it. Fair play to him. Juranovic, as I said the other day, I think he had his one of his best games at left back away to Dundee, but I'm quite curious as to what he'll actually bring when he's on the right flank, because I do think you lose a part of him when you're playing him on the opposite flank from where he's naturally wanting to be. But again, Alison just said it. How do you drop Ralston then at that point? But one of them's actually your best right back if both of them are playing to such a high level.
Yeah. We'll end this segment by just getting Giuseppe Ali up. About time for Ralston making the Scotland squad. Well deserved. So say all of us. Now, yesterday, tinged with sadness at the death of Bertie Auld. What can you say about Bertie Auld, Alison? Just a character, a raconteur, just a natural entertainer. And I think Banky actually called it right when he said he was Mr. Celtic, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's reflected in the fact that when you scroll through social media last night and this morning, everyone has a Bertie Auld story.
Yeah.
Everyone that comes into contact with Bertie Auld has a funny story, a funny memory, has a positive impression that was left by their meeting. I think I'm not sure I can add anything to it that's not already been said, but I think he was renowned for his humour and his entertaining and everything about his extrovert personality, really, as much as the fact that he could play a bit. I think if he hadn't been a footballer, he'd have been a stand-up. He was a funny man, and warm, really warm. And I think like all the Lisbon Lions, for some of us who came through and worked with them and have interviewed them over the years, like there's a real humility about them all. All of them. They weren't fazed by what they had achieved. I think they were all very contactable. They were all willing to speak. They were all very generous with their time, with their stories. And I think Bertie encompassed that. I think he loved the fact that he played this role in Celtic's history. He never get tired of talking about it. Yeah. And you think if you're talking about the same thing for 50 odd years, you might get sick of people asking you for photographs and snapshots. It was never tired. Yeah. I think people left feeling emboldened by speaking to him, enriched by the experience, and that's a gift.
Life was a better place when you spoke to Bertie. Your world was as you say, enriching and emboldened and enlivened. When I've told this story before, I think, but and it's not a well-known one. Well, when Bertie actually got dropped for the 1957 League Cup final for nearly marking, and I don't even think Bertie saw the game, and it was a journalist that broke the news to Bertie, and he said to him, "Bertie, do you know the score?" And he went, "No." And he went, "Celtic won 7-1. And he seemingly said to the journalist, "That's a tragedy, son, a marvellous tragedy." So, and it just encapsulates his rapier wit, right? I mean, just, and he nothing about the fact that he was dropped or anything, just a quick whip. And if you were ever in Bertie's company, one-liners are his, he was just so sharp. And as Alison said, the great thing about Bertie is, I've often said, well, Pope John Paul II stood in front of a crowd at Bellahouston Park, which was rumoured to be 250,000. Bertie Auld had more supporters than that. Everybody knew Bertie Auld. I mean, just Rangers fans, Dumbarton fans, Hibernian fans, Thistle fans, you name it. Bertie could not walk down the street without someone stopping him and saying, "All right, Bertie," and as Alison said, he would just go into raconteur mode. There is no higher accolade than that. He was Mr. Celtic, and what he did to everybody, he just gave them the gift of Celtic, whether they wanted it or not. He bestowed that gift on them for however long he spoke to them. It's a wonderful way to live your life as a footballer for Celtic, and then he just became a professional ambassador and a professional supporter and bestowed that gift upon others. I mean, what a way to live your life, Shawnee.
Aye. I'm sure for the older fans, it's obviously remember him as a talented footballer. All the kind of the stuff he'd done in his playing side, the 65 Cup final, the Lisbon, the Celtic song, the tunnel, 80 odd goals, nearly 300 appearances and all that. But for younger fans, like around about my age group and stuff, who didn't see him in the flesh and had no chance of seeing him in the flesh, that kind of thing, I'd say you still got his greatness. His greatness was still instilled in the same manner as most club greats, which was like stories and songs. In Bertie's case, an abundance of both, you would say. Maybe particularly the songs. But as much as like his commitment to the club you mentioned there, all the different things that he get involved in, he was a professional ambassador, the Celtic TV, all that kind of thing. As much as his considerable commitment to the club and its ethos, I always get the impression it was his commitment to his fellow fans that comes across as much as anything else. And I think that that has ensured that he's going to have a deep place in the hearts of, or he did and has got a place deep in the hearts of a new generation of fans. You see that on social media. It's not just older fans; it's every generation of fans. I think one of the things you'll remember most, I think everybody would agree, no matter what age it was, no matter what generation of fan it was that he was encountering, it was the smile and the glint in his eye. You know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it. You can imagine it. I think that's how he's going to be remembered. The fact that he was a respected pattern merchant also helped.
Alison, I beg the question that in any dictionary or Scottish dictionary, under the word gallus, they should now put C. Bertie Auld as the definition, because that's what he was. He was just gallus.
Yeah. No, that's the word for it. It is. He was the extrovert's extrovert.
Yeah, I guess that sums up what he was actually. Yeah, and sure, there was another. I did a lot of Q&As with him and members of the Lisbon Lions, and one night I wrote about it in my book about Bobby Murdoch treating my dad very specially, and in the bar one night, took him to the bar and bought him a pint. But when he sat down, my dad said, "Bertie, I used to deliver in Maryhill, and I used to see you a lot when you were manager of Thistle and stuff, And Bertie went, I thought I recognised your face. You owe me money." He's just, and that's the kind of guy he was, you know what I mean? He was always, his brain was as sharp as a tack, and and my dad sat there in the company of, I think it was Bertie, Bobby Murdoch, and Jimmy Johnson. And what a night he had, and there was me on the other at the end of that table. 3 European Cup medals and a Scottish Cup runners-up badge from 1983. East Kilbride Select between us, that kind of thing. So, but he was just, I said to Sean just before we came on, he was a force of nature, wasn't he? Bottom line, he was just a force of nature. And there's all those great stories about shouting to John Gregg, how much bonus are you on? John Gregg says 6, he says 3. He says, but my 3's guaranteed. I mean, those things are just, there's legendary. And I'm like you, Sean, to be in that tunnel as they're walking out against Inter Milan. Well, 2 things: to join in the song, and also just to see the Inter Milan's players' faces. I just thought, what's going on here, And then Jimmy Johnson saying, look at them, Bertie, they're all tanned and
gorgeous. They're all there's Ronnie with his teeth in his cap and everything,
And Bertie just saying, "Can they play?" It's like just a gallus Scottish thing to say. They might have all that, but can they play football? And they're just thinking that's the best answer in the world, isn't it?
You say that, Tony. See, you wrote something the other week, and you mentioned the Racing Club game.
Yes.
Well, there was 3 games obviously, but see the particularly ill-tempered one in Montevideo. And this isn't an anecdote from me personally. I just like the story. You're saying he's a force of nature. Obviously, how ill-tempered that game was. There was 3 Celtic players already off, and riot police working overtime. And I think it was near the end of the game, right enough. But still, I think Bertie Auld was told, "Right, that's you. Marching orders, red card." And he just refused to go. He says, "No, I'm not going." And through sheer force of personality, he kept himself on the pitch, played the rest of the match. And remember, earlier in that game, Bobby Lennox had to be escorted off the pitch by a sword-wielding riot police. And somehow Bertie Auld just said, "No, I'm not going off," and they've just let him stay on.
And also as well, I need to check this out, but I read in passing yesterday, he gets sent off in Alfredo Di Stefano's testimonial. I believe, because somebody said that's how serious he took those games. See, you go to the Bernabeu to play an exhibition match, you'd be like, "It's no exhibition." And he's taking lumps. I mean, you have to go something to get sent off in a testimonial, you know what I mean? So these are just legendary things, and legendary stories. And yeah, you can mourn the death and the passing of somebody, but you'd rather celebrate his life, because he lived a life, didn't he? I mean, he lived his life to the full,
That's it. And I think what you're seeing is just his personality shone through. Like, I think nowadays there's a danger of football feeling very sanitised, and sometimes there's a suppression of personality that you don't always see it reflected in how people play and how they come across. I think there's a much bigger chasm between players and normal supporters. It just wasn't there back in their day, the gap was nowhere near as wide. Like, they were still in touch with common fans, but I think what came through was just how much we just had bags of personality, didn't he? He's just a funny man, and that came across in his dealings with people all the time.
Brilliant. And on that note, we'll say goodbye, and we'll say goodbye, Mr. Celtic. You'll be sadly missed. Cheers, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your contributions as well.